Hello fellow adventurers! So last year I put out a video around this time that was a setup and review of my Lawson hammock, which I have hanging up beside me. And in that video I also showcased some of my modifications I made to hold my sleep pad in place inside the hammock. So if you want to check out that video, if you haven't seen that one yet, I'll leave it linked down below in the description box. But on that video I mentioned that I also have a Lawson Underquilt, and I got a number of comments of people asking if I could also review that. So that is what I'm going to do today. So this is what the Lawson Hammock Underquilt looks like. It comes in this nice stuff sack. It's decently large, but if you got a bag that has some cinch straps, which is what I do, you can cinch it down a little bit more to be able to pack it away. So I'll show you what it looks like outside of the bag. So it's decent size, it's green on one side and a gray color on the other, and there's a cinch cord that runs all the way through each edge, as well as each corner has its own little loop and strap bit. So I'll show you what it looks like on the actual hammock. So moving in a little closer now, I can show you exactly how it attaches. So each corner of the underquilt comes with its own like elastic cord, and there's a little loop that has different stitch marks throughout it. I've never really used this loop part. I'm not entirely sure what it is designed for. I just use the little elastic part, and I hook it over top of the pole on each end of my hammock. Just like so. Now each end of the hammock there is a pull cord with one of those little slider adjusters. And so I have mine adjusted that it fits pretty good underneath my hammock for now, but there's one on every corner, so each side of the loop. And I just take the extra length of the cord usually, and I tuck it up inside between the bottom of my hammock and the underquilt so that they aren't hanging down and getting in the way. So the nice thing about this underquilt is that because it attaches to the spreader bars, or at least that's where I attach it, I'm not sure if that's where they intended for it to attach, but it seems like how it fits best. But because it attaches there, that leaves a little bit of a space between where the underquilt starts and where the edge of the actual hammock is, which you might think, okay, am I not going to get colds in the space that's not covered? But usually you're sleeping in where the underquilt actually is, and so having this extra little bit actually keeps it a little drier underneath you, like the water. It keeps it a little more waterproof. You can see underneath. It also gives room because the fly that goes over top of this velcros to the bottom of the hammock, which you would have seen in my setup and review of the hammock. So it still gives room for you to be able to deal with the fly without the underquilt getting in the way, which is something that I really like about it. And it fits nice and snug to the bottom that you hardly even notice that it's there when it's set up. I'll show you this end. So you can see it has a pretty tight hold to the hammock. Now when you are setting it up and tightening it to your hammock, you'll want to be cautious of how tight you're making it, because of course once you go inside, your weight's going to be on top of it, and you want to be able to have it not so tight that the underquilt is then supporting you instead of the hammock bottom. So the underquilt is a polyester exterior with a microfiber fill, and it is rated to -8 degrees Celsius. Now that's its comfort rating for it on its own. It in conjunction with a well-rated sleeping bag and possibly a sleep pad, you can bring this into a lot colder temperatures than that. For me personally, I don't use the underquilt all that often, but that's because I'm usually not camping into really late fall or winter temperatures. I usually try and just stick to late spring, early fall, in between that time frame. And I live in Ontario, so that helps you determine what temperatures that would be. Usually when I'm using my Lawson Hammock, I tend to use my sleep pad, which is the Mech Reactor 3.8. And in my last video I showed the modification I made to hold this in place inside of my hammock. And so I tend to bring this just because it packs down a little bit more compactly than the underquilt. And so I choose to bring this instead of the underquilt. If I was going into colder temperatures, I would probably bring both and use them together. Along with that sleep pad, I usually in the warm summer nights, I bring my Mountain Warehouse Basecamp 200. This is a pretty cheap sleeping bag. It's nothing fancy because half the time I hardly even need a sleeping bag with me in the summer. This is a rectangular style sleeping bag, and I usually unzip it all the way and kind of throw it on top of me like a quilt. So this works well for me because it packs down really small. It's pretty easy to bring with me. As it starts to get colder, I might bring the underquilt, my sleep pad, and this sleeping bag and be toasty warm, or I will opt not to bring this and not to bring the underquilt, and I will bring my -18, it's a Teton Sport Celsius, no, it's a Teton Sport Fahrenheit bag. I'll try and insert a clip of it so you can see. But I'll usually bring that instead and just use that with my sleep pad, and I usually stay plenty warm enough. I do really like this underquilt. I'm glad I bought it because the Lawson is a bit of a trickier hammock because of its unique shape and size to get an underquilt from any other brand to be able to fit it properly. So there's all kinds of fancy underquilt brands out there that have really great temperature ratings and that pack down super small. But I just liked the way this one fit the Lawson the best when I was looking into it. And I liked that it matched the Lawson perfectly. You hardly notice that it's there. And so that's why I went for it. I have also just used this Lawson underquilt as a top quilt. Before I got my Basecamp 200 sleeping bag, I brought this in the summer just to throw over top of myself with my sleep pad, and that was what I would use. So I mentioned that I usually pack the underquilt into a bag with cinch straps when I'm actually bringing it with me. So I just thought I'd show that bag. So this is actually the bag that came with my -18 sleeping bag, but I found it a really small bag for that sleeping bag, and it was almost impossible to get it back into this bag. So I bought a new stuff sack for it and have used this one now for the underquilt. So this is it fully adjusted right now, but I usually loosen it, stuff it in, and then cinch it down, and it packs down to basically the size you see here. So about half the size of what it was in the green bag. So that is basically everything I know about the Lawson underquilt. That's how I use it. If you have any questions about it, leave them in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer them or direct you to a spot where you can find an answer. If you have any tips about how you use it, let me know too, because it is something that I don't use that often, and so I'm still learning how to use it best for my own camping style. So I'd love to hear those suggestions. And I think that's going to be it for this video. If you have any other ideas for topics you'd like me to cover, also leave those in the comment section, because I'm always looking for ideas to film. And happy adventuring! Bye!